not, I like enjoy nausea. Like, if I don't get nauseous when I do drugs, I'm fucking whack. This fucking sucks. I want to feel like shit right now. And most people that do drugs like to feel nauseous. Well, at least opiate addicts.
I've never done
So,
anything underneath it.
I've never been one to complain if I get nauseous, but, you know, I woke up last night, we watched a movie. I never get to spend time with Kareem anymore. Watched a movie, went to sleep early. I don't know, probably like at midnight, which for me is pretty rare. Trying to get on like a better sleep schedule. I feel like I can get more done content-wise, writing-wise. There's a lot of time that I waste by sleeping because my sleep schedule's off. And basically, I think the biggest thing that takes up time for me is being on the phone. I have to be on the phone all the time with different projects that I'm trying to do because that's what I ultimately want to do. I want to get all this other stuff off the ground. We got the horror movie going into production in January. It's pretty low budget for, you know, considering. But this new one with Nick, it's looking like that's going to be like a real movie. We have meetings lined up with some pretty big dog people. I'll post pictures as they come in over the next couple weeks. But I mean, we could have a deal probably next week, I'd imagine. And I'm hoping that that happens before Christmas. That would make a great Christmas. And then, of course, the documentary. And I worked on that a lot yesterday as well in the day. So we're just about up to an hour cut to show you guys. And then, you know, it'll just keep trickling in as it has been. It's taken a hell of a fucking lot longer than I could have ever anticipated. But it's interesting because what you guys have seen, the 37-minute rough cut, like that's the beginning, and the film just gets so much more. It just gets so much. Now, why doesn't that sound right? Like trying to say out loud. It becomes so much more. It sound right? More different. Differenter. It gets differenter. It gets differenters. Gets a lot more different. It just doesn't sound fucking right. I don't know. It changes rhythm, I guess, by, you know, from what you guys have seen, it's more of like a conventional doc, and then it gets more into the, like, cinema verite, because the footage, like, speaks for itself, and really, like, the rest of the film is like that. Then towards the end, it kind of picks up back where the beginning left off. It's kind of, I don't know, unique structure. You know, most documentaries have, like, a pretty uniform, you know, set of dynamics and how it operates. So I don't know. I mean, it's been a challenge to do that. But I woke up this morning and first off, like I woke up feeling feverish. I think I had a fever. I just felt like shit. Like I had a headache. Smoked weed last night. I'm not smoking as much as I was, and I'm really trying to like get completely sober again. Just, I don't know. I mean, I look back at the completely sober version of myself, and although weed, honest to God, it really helps with my mental health stuff because I'm crazy. I mean, it's fucking true. You know, for a long time I tried to, like, my parents would be like, God, you're not crazy, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, just going through a phase. And I'm like 33. Like, yeah, Dad, I got arrested for pimping again. He's like, fuck. You're not crazy. You're not bad. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not. And then now I'm kind of like, maybe I am. Having a kid certainly, you know, got me more anchored, you know. Not to say that I wasn't doing drugs when he, you know, it's like, I thought that having a kid, I'd be like, drugs? No way, man. I'm not that selfish, but I guess I am. I guess maybe I'm just a piece of shit. I don't even think that. I think I just am a drug addict. And, you know, I wish that a child would instantly make 20 years of being a drug addict just go away because now you have a reason to behave yourself. It's not even behaving, you know. I don't have fun when I use drugs anymore. I'm simply self-medicating. I don't do a lot of drugs these days. I do Molly. I'll say that. So what? You know, I do. Not like every day. I'm like driving, getting my dick sucked, rolling. I'm like, fuck, this Molly's falling, babe. She's like, I know. It's not like that. We do it on like special occasions, and obviously when our child isn't around. And I smoke weed, but I don't consider that a drug. But I would like to get to a place where I'm not doing any of that. So, kind of felt feverish, and then I puked like 5 times. I was talking to Nick on the phone, and I kept puking. He's like, "Are you using?" I'm like, "No, I'm just puking." He's like, "You're using." I'm like, "No, I'm not." Hello? And then like I hear Karina like shuffling upstairs. She's like, "Are you using?" Nick texted me and said you're using. I'm like, "Oh God, Jesus Christ, no, I'm not." But I puked. That's weird. I don't know. I don't usually puke. Karina, I will say, has similar symptoms. She's feeling kind of a stomach bug, so maybe that's what it is. I don't know. So then I slept the rest of the day, and I woke up
What's he using?
an hour ago. I don't know. Once in a while, I like wake up and like tweet,
It's
"Fuck Amber Heard," and then like go back to sleep. All right, so sorry about that, but yeah, no, I'm up now, and so now here I am. So let's get into the story. So where we had left off last time, and I guess this is the base storyline. I put up a wasting talent video yesterday for the $10 tier, and a $20 tier gets some of those other storylines that keeps going, and then this will be the base one for the $3 tier. And I'm not even doing anything for YouTube right now. I need to get back to that because I feel bad for people that have supported me on that platform. And they're like, "You're a sellout." And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, sucks posting shit, and then you're like taking a shit, and you get, someone's like, "You're a bad father," and you're like straining while you're shitting. You're like, "Fuck, am I?" I don't know. That's not shit you want to like read all the time. And then people be like, "You're too sensitive. You're a bitch." And I'm like, I say that all the time. I am overly sensitive. I am a bitch. Don't say you're a bitch, bitch. People are just so weird. It's like, I'm fucking joking. I don't think I'm a bitch. I put food on the table for my family every day. That is the antithesis of being a bitch. Being a bitch is not being a good father, not being a faithful partner to your partner who is a dude. That's being solid. That's not being a bitch. Okay, let's get into the story. So where we had left off last time in the Redux series, which I guess is more... Oh, and I'm going to get back into Wasco as well. No, I don't know. You guys will appreciate when those videos do come up because it's been a while, And I'm not going to spend time recapping it. Maybe I'll recap it in the description, so that nobody can be like, "Yeah, this is fucking 4 minutes of recap, you piece of shit, fucking cheater." Sorry, I'll not do 4 minutes of recap, but let me do a couple minutes of recap. Where we had left off last time, where we are on the storyline. So things had kind of shifted for me right around, like, I'd blown the Copbusters money, or contract. I mean, I had a deal on the table, $400,000. That's the second time that I've blown it for. 2 times the same amount of money. I blew another $400,000 contract in 2017. For the life rights for the Mike Virgin story, and I didn't do it because if I had done that, I'd never be able to use that story for anything. I wouldn't even be able to like post videos about that story. I wouldn't be able to write the screenplay. I just wrote about it, so I didn't do it. But the Copbusters era, I had blown that contract, and at a certain point, I'd stopped smoking crack. When I drink in the shampoo bottle. Around that time, one thing that was interesting that had happened was I'd met this guy, Happy, not his real name. Happy. What did I say his girlfriend's name was? Amy? Her real name was Amanda. Well, if you don't know both of their names, it doesn't matter. But, okay, so I started hanging out with this glass blower guy. Now, that guy introduced me to, like, a higher class of people. And it's really shitty to even look at people like that. At least these people thought they were higher class. Let's just put it that way. Like, what do you do? I do photography. I'm like, really? Do you do shows? He's like, no. Just for men's ski catalogs. I'm like, oh, dope. He's like, yeah. It's pretty dope. But then there was like a bunch of, a lot of actors, a lot of actresses, and that's where I first met film industry people. This guy would have these crazy parties at his house. And why was he plugged up with those guys? I don't really know. I don't even know where he was from originally. Somewhere on the East Coast. I think New York. I think he was from New York. And he had become a world famous glassblower. You know what really sucks about these stories is that I make up the names of people and then I can't fucking remember what I call people. And that must be confusing if you're following along. I know Sass, that's not his real name, and I've slipped and said that fucker's real name a few times, and I think he watches my Patreon. But, god damn, man. I cannot remember what I call. Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The reason I think that he had those kind of people at his house was because, first of all, he had a fat house. In Santa Barbara, if you've never been there, is picturesque. You know, there's been soap operas named after it. It's like a really picturesque, picture-perfect beach town. It looks like a postcard. Contrary to popular belief, and people that are from there would never be like, "Shah, dude." They'd be like, "It's drugged out, it's crime infested." It's not at all. I've lived in LA for a long, long time, and it's night and day. LA is pretty wild. You see some crazy shit. You hear gunshots all the time. You see, there's the ghetto birds, ghetto choppers. They're the LAPD helicopters, and they'll just like, I'll be like in my backyard, all methed out, like beating off to my bushes. I have no idea why, and I could just be doing that in here. And then I'll like look up, and there'll be like a beam of light. I'll just be like, busted, fuck, and I'll just like dive back into my house. That has never happened, but they do shine light when they're looking for somebody that's running. You see it a lot on TV when there's like a high-speed chase, and then they have like the camera crew for the news. They also have the LAPD, and they fly from helicopters above. So LA is kind of like a wild concrete jungle. It really is. Santa Barbara's not that way at all. But of course, people from any town get very insulated. You're like, dude, my town is wild. On the 16th of every month, they do a topless barbecue off. People actually say stuff like that. You've rented that like in prisons, people in rural areas. They're like, yeah, once in a while we do barbecues and the girls don't wear bikinis.
What?
New TheraFlu soft chews, easy to take chewables packed with the power of TheraFlu in every bite.
Moo, lay down.
Go. It's wild, man. Yeah, it is.
Okay, I turned it up.
What's up? I'm Samuel. Hey, Samuel. Nice to meet you. Yeah. I don't know where that came from. Okay, so
What the fuck? Is this remote?
Santa Barbara, though,
No, you should
because of how nice it is, it attracts a lot of celebrities. There's a lot of film industry people there. Oprah Winfrey lives there. Michael Jordan lives there. Michael Jackson lived there. Sort of just mowing kids down. Like a choma, like a Willie.
My wife's
Wonka
naked,
fucking
Trump
choma
2024,
factory.
and we're from Ohio.
Weird ass dude, huh? That is attorney.
My wife's pants are off.
But it's
I
like
might
a
not get to
place
see
where
that.
you walk around and you'll see famous
You
people.
should read the other
You
one.
just will. You run into them. And it's like no big thing. It almost feels like you're on like an old Scooby-Doo episode.
Get it
Remember
on.
when they used to have like guest stars?
I'm at your
Like,
door.
This week
What you
on
watching?
Scooby-Doo,
Where the baby oil? I got beans and bologna.
And it like shows a guy twirling
Hide your
the
baby
balls,
oil,
so
Diddy
they're
on the
like
hunt.
Batman and Robin.
Hey, babe, can we watch a
Batman and
movie?
Robin.
Yeah, let me whip out
Fuck
YouTube
yeah.
live first.
Yeah.
Have you ever had your stink star stretched
How
out?
was that? You always kind of run into people like that. So somebody like him.
Ooh, vape.
Not only did he have
Also,
a lot of
give
money,
that man
this
a full
guy
360
had
degree
shit
titty
ton of money.
twister.
This guy he was a glass blower, but he was also really plugged in not only to kind of like the B-list acting
I would
world,
stretch out your girlfriend, bro. Hey, Jack Black, suck
he
my
was also
fucking cock.
plugged into high-end drug dealers like Sass. That's how I met him.
Hell yeah, man. We're from Ohio, bud. I like my guns, too.
Made $500,000, and I'd gone up to that mansion when I went to that Halloween party. When I was on acid, and they basically recruited me to their house, and I thought they were trying to butt fuck. I seriously thought they were trying to do gay shit. And I was fucking like, I'm down. If there's money involved, I'm fucking with it. And the girl's like, we don't need to do that. I was like, yeah.
Why
I'm
did
just
you
saying.
skip them?
When it comes to that, I'll fucking do anything. Why? Bro, shut up. Don't kill it. When we got to that house, I don't know if you remember the story, but there was no furniture and it was essentially full of, I don't know, there was a bunch of DVDs on the floor, but they had a lot of glass pipes, like just a bunch of high-end bubblers, you know? I mean, nowadays I smoke out of some straight bullshit, you know? This is my bubbler. You know, this is like a really dirty bubbler. Ew. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's like $50 or something, I don't know. You know, and this guy would sell shit for like $7,000-8,000 for a bubbler. And when I had gone to that house initially, they had these big glass pieces scattered all throughout the house. Now at the time I didn't realize that he had blown these pieces for him, and that's what this guy did. He would sit in his studio at his house.
Oh, look, he did
They had a pool, so they always had these pool parties. They had an outside fire pit, so it was really cool. Like, you go over there,
I know.
very drugged out atmosphere, cocaine everywhere, but also like weird drugs too, like non-social drugs. They're like, there's like a bunch of like Samoan guys, like with their shirt off. They're like, yo man, you want a line of Rufinol? Like, the date rape drugs? They're like, yeah, we're snorting it to get heart palpitations. I'm like, no. There were people doing obscure drugs. They're maybe not roofies, but you know, ketamine, a lot of PCP, a lot of Molly. You know, it's almost like the environment there, aside from the cocaine and then later the heroin, was, you know, a lot. It was almost like being at an after party at a rave. Lots of like hot tan gay guys like rubbing Vicks Vapor Rub on their chest and like sniffing each other, stuff like that. I was like, shit's fucking bomb. Love it here. Never want to go home. And at that time, I started, you know, dating Jade. I mean, she was, not about dating, but she was like my side bitch, right? And then we got in that situation, and now we get to the point where I don't know the girl's name. You go, this is all recap. No, it's not. It's too convoluted of a storyline for me not to remember all this, so I guess it is. I'm sorry. This girl, I don't remember her name, but really quick, she was the girl, let's call her Sandy. She was the girl that nowadays is very wealthy, balling for marijuana. She makes a lot of money. She's one of those people that was like one of the pioneers in the recreational or the medical marijuana community back when it was kind of like quasi-legal. Like it was legal, but like it wasn't. It was one of those, it was like a needle exchange kind of thing. And she just stayed in the game, and now she's a baller. You know, she drives a Porsche and she's doing it. You know, she's just always some stoner chick that like would wear sweatpants, and she was like, it was like one of those girls that was almost like a homeboy, you know. And she was dating this guy named Scott. Now, Scott was the guy that we had talked about in the video that came before this. He was a meth dealer, you know, and even different drug, you know, circles, scenes that I've been in tend to look down on meth because meth's weird as fuck. Dudes will get spun out and be like, hey man, I'm trying to suck your cock right now, and you know, kind of weirds people out sometimes. There's a lot of weird gay meth stuff. And I'm not against it. I mean, if I'm gonna get my dick sucked, I'm just gonna be honest. It's gotta be from a woman. I'd probably do anything for like 40 or $50 though. But I've never been in that situation. Don't get it twisted. I've always sold drugs. I don't know. That was always my hustle. But if I could have, you know, probably would have. I just haven't. No judgment to you junkies that have, because I'm with it. I know they get down. He ended up putting Sandy, and I know that's probably not the name I used last time, because that's not her real name. That's somebody I definitely want to protect her identity. He ended up putting her in the hospital. And if you remember, Kevin had been fucking Amanda behind Happy's back. That was a big deal. You know, that was controversial at that time because they'd been together like 20 years or some crazy shit. I don't know, 15 years. They were like high school sweethearts. and they just been together forever. They're one of those couples that like people are jealous of. You know, they're like fucking bingo partners.
Quit.
I don't know if they do that, but those kind of people. You know, they do like couple shit. Like they have like pajamas with like, you know, matching embroidery. Like I'm with him, I'm with her. Like t-shirts like that. Like they were like one of those annoying couples, and they were one of those picture perfect couples that you would see from an outside perspective and you wouldn't think that anything was wrong. And then of course they do ecstasy together, and his dick winds up in her.
AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, images, layout, everything, including the content, literally in a few minutes. Watch this. So I'm using Designer, which will import content from your blog, from a Google Doc or a Word doc, or even a YouTube, depending on the plan you choose. For now, I'm going to use WordGenie, the AI feature. So all I need to do is give it an idea and then click on next. And then just tell WordGenie what audience am I targeting my book towards. Then it'll just show me a selection of titles, which I'll just choose one that catches my eye. Then it'll suggest the outline for my book, which I'm free to edit as I see fit. And now the magic happens. It will generate the full content of the ebook, ready for me to edit, tweak, and tune. And obviously, I want to make it my own, so it comes across and reads really, really well. And so from here now, it's saved as a draft, or I can simply choose a template. Now, fuck.
Scooby-Doo and the Harlem Globetrotters, like, solve the case, dude. Dude's just spinning the ball. He's like, I think it was the massage. So by the time that Sandy
Lay down, honey.
got beat up, went to the hospital, admitted to Amanda that she had gotten beat up by Scott, I took it upon myself to try to impress Jade. I let him kill him. I came up with the whole plan, and see, now I'm trying to shorten the recap. It all comes to the moment where I end up going to the house because my plan was to block him in the driveway, go in there with this fake gun, and scare him. That was it. I was like, I didn't want to hurt him. Even though, look, I really did like this chick. She was my friend. You know, she'd been my friend since high school. Always, like, you know, we weren't sexual, but like I remember one time walking in on her getting boned, and the guy had socks on, and they were like little like snowmen logo socks, like these little shorts, and it was so gross. She was like a good friend of mine. I just saw these balls and these snowmen socks, but I just stood there sipping my beer, and I was like, this is fucking disgusting.
Mary.
Gross. They're like, dude, can you shut the door? I'm like, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that really happened. So, I ended up getting to this house, and of course, the plan was they were going to call me and let me know when he came. I think he was coming to deliver a quarter pound of meth. That's what, I'm pretty sure that it was something like that. I don't know, that's what this guy did. And this guy, by the way, Scott, was one of those guys that was always in and out of prison. Now, at that time, I wasn't always in and out of prison. I was always in and out of jail. I wasn't a prison guy yet.
Lay down.
He had, like,
Then get off the bed.
tattoos of, like, prison gun towers on his chest. I'm like, is that so you don't forget that you're in prison? He's like, yeah, so. I was like, all right. It's cool. Fuck yeah,
Oh,
man.
shit, look at you. Oh, man.
Prison towers. Imagine telling the tattoo artist that.
Was he smoking
Yeah.
100?
I want you to blast some or I want you to blast some prison towers on my chest. You think that'd be dope? The tattoo artist is like, yeah, for sure. That's what kind of guy he was. And he's also the kind of guy that would do a term. And I know if you know convicts, you know people like this. You do a fucking term.
Moody.
And the day he gets out, he already has a digital scale. He's already selling meth. He's getting his dick sucked by guys. And like driving around listening to like music that's not popular anymore. He's like, yeah, dude.
Lay down.
Check out this Corrupt album. And it was like, you know, I don't know. Probably was popular when at the time that I'm talking about this story. So then,
Lay down right now.
I show up at the house, and I end up going in the backyard
Lay down.
because the whole plan was to kind of intercept him in the front of the house. He never shows up. Nobody calls me, nothing. I mean, they call me and let me know that he's there. I pull my car up. I had his fake gun. I blacked out the tip, and I just waited in my car for a while. I don't know, 45 minutes, something like that. So I end up going in the house, and they're all in the backyard. They're having this wild party. It's like shit you'd see in a movie. It's like chicks with big fake tits, like playing volleyball. There's like not even a volleyball net. They're just like, you know, like diving down, and their boobs are flapping. And I just see him sitting in the chair. So I go up to him, put the gun up to his face, and I start talking shit to him. Now, unbeknownst to me, this guy had pulled a gun out and put it on his lap, and he like kind of at first, I guess, acted scared. You know, that was at least I couldn't tell if, you know, he knew that the gun was fake, but there was like a certain point where something clicked, and his whole attitude had just completely shifted. And at this point, he just turned around and he started hitting a blunt. I was like, I have a gun to your fucking face, bitch. And he's just like, and then Amanda's like, I cheated on you, Happy, with Kevin. Now, Kevin was there. Now, you would think that, and sorry, 25 minutes in, I did a whole recap, but we still have half a video, so don't worry. You would think that this high stress situation, me pulling what looked like a gun out on Scott, would be like the main focal point. I swear to God, Kevin, or Happy, and his girlfriend Amanda were so, like, such, they're like the king and queen, god damn, they were the king and queen of this scene. So to hear something like that, it was literally like in a movie when like the music like stops. Like you just hear like the scratch of a turntable. And all of a sudden me pointing a gun at Scott just became pretty unimportant. And this guy, Happy, was, I don't know, he's like, I'm trying to think of like a way that you guys would understand what kind of guy he was. He was like, you know, he was like a Grateful Dead groupie guy. Curly hair, pothead, real like old school pot grower outlaw manners. Everybody liked him. Personable, charismatic guy. Gregarious. Fucking lame word. He's gregarious. And he started crying. Now, I still have the gun pointed at Scott, mind you. Like, you would think that would be like that would trump everything else. But he just starts bawling in front of everybody. And I'm still pointing the gun at Scott. And he's like, and Happy was holding a Snapple. Remember Snapple drinks? And he fucking threw it at Amanda, and he hit her. And this is like after he's crying. So she's like, I cheated on you with Kevin, and his face just completely changed. He starts crying. He throws the Snapple at Amanda, and he hits her with it. You know, hits it in her shoulder. But, you know, a Snapple's like a thick glass drink. As soon as that happens, all eyes are already on them anyway. So now the entire party in the backyard just kind of erupts into chaos. And people go to, like, guys get up to go physically restrain him. Because he had the look of a madman in his eyes. If you've ever been around somebody that has just found out that they've been cheated on, it's the mall massacre look. You know, just like... But he was crying, so his face scrunched up, and he looked really sad, and he took the Snapple, he took a sip of it, and he fucking chucked it at her, hit her in the shoulder. So now the whole place kind of like erupts, and these guys spring up, and they restrain him. In the chaos, I'm still holding the gun. It's a plastic gun, and I have the real gun in the car, by the way, and I have Scott's car, you know, kind of blocked in. He can't leave. I have him blocked in. That was like the whole point. I was going to embarrass him with the fake gun, and then, you know, I was going to look like I was a tough guy, and then I was going to get my dick sucked by Jade, and then I was going to cry on the way home because I'm a bitch, and be like, oh my god, I cheated on Jenny for like the 30th time. No, I'd only done that a couple times at this point, but at this point, it happened. And you see videos of me, from that period. You know, and some of the master clips from the documentary. I think those are on the upper tiers. But yeah, like, I was in no shape or form to be with a 12 like that. Like, I was like that all the time with that. And I like wore like wife beaters, and I didn't. I like, the only tattoo I had was like the Fear and Loathing, and I had like the sun. Junkie piece of shit. So in this chaos, everybody goes to stop Happy because he had thrown this at Amanda. Scott somehow gets away because in my vantage, I'm not that far. I'm like, I don't know, maybe 3 feet from him, shaking this plastic, you know, air gun in his face or whatever. And in this whole party just goes up in flames. It just erupts. And people are holding Happy down. Everybody's screaming. You know, Amanda's screaming, "How could you hit me, you piece of shit?" And Scott gets away. Okay, but, like I said, his car was blocked in. So, now, I'm wondering, because he's the kind of guy that always brag about, you know, busting cops and fools. He, like, went to private school. No, he didn't. He was one of the trashier people in Santa Barbara. You know, there are some trashy people there, but it's not, I mean, there's, like, trashy and, like, a really trashy area, and then there's like, you know, trashy in a beach town. You know, you're trashy, but you wear like, you know, tongs and shit. You play ping pong. You know, that kind of trashy. So he gets away, and I'm thinking that he might go to his car and he might get a gun. You know, back then, even though I had a gun, even though there was that guy Andy that was around in the scene and he was selling guns, other people had them as well. There weren't any shootings, but Scott was the kind of guy, and I don't trust people on crystal meth anyway. You know, they, you know, hallucinate that, you know, some bisexual ghost is like telling them to do stuff, and then they just want to kill people or whatever the case. People go into weird meth psychosis, so they're very unstable. In the eye of the chaos, he ends up getting away, and I knew that I didn't have a real gun, so what I did is this house had like these like lemon trees like on the side of it. It was like, I don't know, just a patch of them, but it was like the kind of area where you get high, you know. I'd been on acid and like gone and hung out in these lemon trees. So as all this stuff's going on, Amanda's yelling, people are holding Happy down. Kevin runs out of that park. He's gone. He's like, I'm out of here. I don't even know where he went, and I don't know where Scott went. I lost track of him. Like, people, you gotta, like, kind of visualize. People were, like, leaping up, getting in front of me, and he just took it as his cue to get out of there. In my mind, I'm thinking he's going to his car to get a gun. So I go to the lemon trees, and I kind of hang out there for quite a while. And I hate to admit this, but I was scared. You know, I was scared that he was going to retaliate in some way. So I go hang out in these trees, I hide for a little bit, and he ends up, you know, getting away, I guess, because when I ultimately come out, his car's still there because I had him blocked in, but he's no longer there, and there's really nobody there. Amanda's there, some of her girlfriends are there, and then, you know, Kevin's gone, and Happy's not there either. So I didn't know where anybody was. All I knew is that I had, what's sold out? I don't know, Karina just said, you sold out. No, don't start with that shit. I don't know, I just got some text message. So, like, you know, I go and I do my little obligatory go up to Amanda. I'm like, hey, are you okay? She's like, no. I'm like, well, why would you admit that you cheated on Happy at that moment when I'm pointing a gun at Scott? He's like, everybody knew that that wasn't a real gun. And I guess, you know, she didn't tell me right there and then what her logic was behind that. She did say that nobody thought that it was a real gun. Years later, if you guys remember, when I got married in the Doom Marriage series, when I ended up marrying my ex-wife, I had relapsed on heroin the night we got married. She was living in Denver. And, you know, she had like a 5-year-old kid out there. So after we got married, after our little fantasy of like meeting on the internet and marrying after a week, and then she's like, I'm a hooker. I'm like, what the fuck? She's like, I suck dick for Tylenol 3s. I'm like, you're gross. She's like, you are a drug addict. After all that stuff wore off, I had to go out to Denver and live with her for a little bit because I was living on Jeff's couch at the time, and I wanted to go be with my chick. I'm codependent as fuck, and I wanted to go be with her. And I did have feelings for her at the time, or at least I thought I did. And when I ended up going out to Denver, I ran into Happy and Amanda. They ended up staying together. They didn't break up because Amanda had admitted to cheating on Happy. But when I had met them out there, they were holed up in a motel in Denver. And I was strung out already when I went out there, and I didn't have any connections or anything. I didn't bring any dope with me. Luckily, I think the way that I had found them was I put a post on Facebook and, said that, I was in Denver, do I have any friends here? One of those kind of posts. And I think that's how I connected with them. They ended up reaching out to me and telling me that, that they were out there. So when I had seen them, and I married her in 2016. The story that I'm telling you guys right now probably took place in 2007. So I hadn't seen them in about 9 years. Now, back in that time, when I was going over to their house and they were having those pool parties, they were smoking heroin off tinfoil. They were just getting into being drug addict or heroin addicts. They were already druggies, but again, I kind of polluted that scene. So I hadn't seen, the last time I saw them, they were smoking heroin off tinfoil, and their lives had already gone to shit, and we'll cover all that in the course of this Redux series. But when I ended up seeing them in Denver, they were doing really bad. They were living in one of those hotels that was like, weekly. You pay for it weekly. It has like a kitchen in it, and it's just really grimy. They were living in there. They had all this like musky like old clothes, and just smelled like stale cigarettes in there. And they both looked like death. They were covered in track marks. Neither of them had veins anymore. They were both muscling their shots, so they would cook up shots and then they would just stick it in their ass cheeks. Their ass cheeks literally looked like a statue that had damage on it. There was like chunks of their flesh of their asses missing. They had become IV heroin addicts, and they just lived out there. And the thing that I never understood about them out there was, and I had covered in the Do Marriage, but basically they had like a weird connection, some Pisces that they'd call. The phone number would open, I think at like 10 in the morning, maybe 9 in the morning or something. You put your order in, and they tell you that you couldn't leave whatever address you gave them. You were literally calling like a fucking call center for drug dealers, and then they would dispatch runners out to you to deliver the sack. So I'd always drop my wife off in Littleton, Colorado, the same place that Columbine had happened in 1999. And I dropped her off there at work, and then she'd let me take her car. I'd go out to their hotel, they'd put the order in, and then you'd have to wait from I think 10 to 1 in the afternoon at the address or whatever. They wouldn't give you an exact time because they were trying to avoid getting set up by law enforcement. And it was just the lifestyle that they were living was really miserable. I never understood where they were getting their money either. I mean, Happy gave me the story that he was basically getting paid to teach classes for glassblowing. He was a world-renowned glassblower, but it just didn't seem like they'd be able to support that kind of habit, living in a weekly motel by him giving lectures to glassblowers. To me, it just didn't seem like that could be that lucrative of a industry anyway. So during that time, I mean, it was really sad. They would just shoot heroin, be in this hotel, and they'd listen to they'd watch Celebrity Rehab on TV. Nod out, occasionally hey man, can you pass the ashtray? I'd be like, is this what you guys do every day? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I think that she was probably prostituting herself. I don't want to put that out there, but that's what I think. So I guess I just did. That was my personal theory about where they were getting money. But anyway, the point of telling you all this is when we were out in Denver, 9 years after the events that I'm talking about right now, we started having a conversation about this time period and about, I never understood why when I had gone there to try to scare Scott, and nobody knew that either. Like, remember, I was trying to scare Scott so that I could impress that girl Jade. That was like my whole purpose behind that. But Amanda just admitted on cheating on Happy right there and then. And she had told me that because they knew that the gun was fake, that, and Scott had one in his lap, and I was scared that he was going to go to his car, and, I felt like he struck me as the kind of guy that, even if he had a gun, which he had out of his lap when I had seen him, he's the kind of guy that I just don't see having a loaded gun. And I thought that like maybe he was going to go to his car and get bullets, and maybe that was just presumptuous of me. And I didn't know that, that night. I had no idea really what was going on. I just knew that it struck me as odd that he would pull it out and not use it if there were actually bullets in there. He also struck me as the kind of idiot that would actually shoot me because he was like in meth psychosis. And what she told me is that, and that was like my whole logic at that point, is that I thought that he was going to go to his car and grab the bullets or grab a real gun, or maybe that wasn't a real gun, or whatever I thought he was going to do. I thought that somehow him going to his car was going to hurt me in some way. And what she told me is that they knew that he actually had a gun because there was a goddamn mule for him. There was somebody there that had already told him what the plan was, even though nobody knew that I had a fake gun. But I guess they could tell when I whipped it out on him. So by Amanda doing that, she actually kind of like jumped on the grenade for me. Her whole purpose of doing that was to save me. And my logic, like, being, okay, if he had a real gun, why would he just, why would he? I thought that he didn't have bullets in it, and I thought that he would go to his car and get them. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I was all fucking drugged out back then. But basically, the point is that Amanda had admitted to me that day that the reason that she had told Happy that she cheated on him was to try to create chaos so that I could get out of there. Because she said that Scott actually had a loaded gun. That gun that he had actually was loaded, according to her. And I didn't find that out until 9 years later. So me pulling out a fake gun on him could have cost me my life at that point. Not because he was a tough guy, just because he was meth psychosis enough to actually do it. And we started talking further all those years later when I was in Denver. And, I brought up Kevin's name. And I never really knew how that whole situation played out. I mean, I knew them after that night, and they ended up staying together. But she basically told me that they never bring Kevin's name up anymore, and that was the only time. By that point, that was 9 years later. They'd been together who knows how long. Probably, I don't know, 9 years more than they'd already been together, like 15 years or whatever it was. She said in all that time, she'd only seen him cry 2 different times. One time when his dog died, and one time when Kevin had cheated on her. So what ends up happening with Scott, that wasn't over with him. So he ends up getting away. I finally come out from that Lemon Tree area. And, of course, like I said, I thought he was going to go to his car. And I thought that because he left, that I guess that's what my logic was looking back on it. But Amanda was there and Happy had left, Kevin had left. I end up leaving. Now remember, at this time, I'm still in debt with Saks. Still have to work off that money. I got an opportunity right around then to get a new house. And we were living in this like 5-bedroom that was kind of by the beach. That's the house that we were living at in all those old videos. And, you know, it just got hot. There was always people coming over there. That guy had OD'd there. So it became time for us to get a new place. And we found the nicest house I've ever had. It was in a place called Hidden Valley in Santa Barbara, which is kind of, you know, the outskirts of a nice place called Hope Ranch. I don't remember what we were paying for this condo, but it was, I mean, it was like really, it was like, even though it wasn't it was only 2 bedrooms, but it was the nicest place I've ever had. Like, this place was just amazing. You know, it was in a cul-de-sac. You know, it had its own guest house. Like, what fucking condo has its own guest house? And in the guest house was like outside of this outside parking garage, and we made a gym there. Even though at that point I was on methadone and I was already gaining a lot of weight, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna get a treadmill, try to shed some of these pounds. Around that time, so I'm still owing Sass the money, and at this point, I was like a full-blown heroin dealer, so I was able to pay him off, you know, or at least started paying him off. Remember, he's the guy that ended up jacking me for $70,000, and Jenny pistol whipped him and broke his jaw right before I went to the feds when I did the 5 years. But I was paying him off little by little. Now, we had talked about in some of the earlier Redux videos how I basically invented the new heroin marketplace. You know, everybody was used to doing Oxycontins, all that. Remember I said that we came in, we were selling these balloons. They were going for like $25 to the runners. Runners were selling for $50 or $60 a balloon. And that was such an effective marketing strategy that other drug dealers in Santa Barbara, like other wannabe me's, but not as cool, they had like their right ear pierced, and they had like a cross dangling earring. You know, they had like just, I don't know, weird like imitations of what I was doing. One of the guys that had done that was this guy, Steve, and we talked about him before. He was the guy that he had owned a pizza place in Santa Barbara, and he was also one of the co-owners of like one of the biggest medical marijuana dispensaries. This guy, Steve, was a full-blown crackhead, right? And I wasn't smoking crack now. Like, I had stopped that, and I was just focusing on selling heroin. I was like, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm just going to focus on selling heroin now. But I wasn't smoking crack, so I wasn't acting as erratic. Now, this guy, the reason I say that he was a piece of shit, not because he was a crackhead. I'm not going to say that because somebody's a crackhead, they're a piece of shit, although that's often synonymous. Usually when you smoke crack, you do piece of shit things. This guy had an underage girlfriend. Now, we didn't know that at the time. He was probably like 24, 25. I was like 22 at the time. He was a few years older than me. He always had a lot of guns at his house. And he had this girl with him. Now, this girl was like, you know, she looked young, but she could have been like 18 or 19. She had that kind of look. She had colored hair, like blue hair. And he had her strung out on PCP. She was like this guy's sex slave. You know, and we come to find out later, much later, after knowing this guy for a while, that she was a teenage runaway. She was from like the South or something. I think she's from like Alabama or Arkansas. She's from Arkansas, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't know. She was a teenage runaway, and this guy basically kept her strung out on PCP and would just do crazy shit. He's like, you want to run a train on this bitch with me? I'm like, your girlfriend? He's like, yeah. She likes getting spit roasted. I'm like, no, dude. I'm on methadone. I weigh like 230 pounds. I haven't shit for a month. I think I'm too constipated to shit even if I had a sex drive. You just like be like, But this guy had this like little young girl strung out on PCP, you know? She didn't even know what she was like doing. He told her that it was DMT. He was like, yeah. Like, this is DMT. It's a spiritual drug, but it was really PCP, and she became this like deranged, completely like disassociated like sex slave to him. Point is he wanted to meet me. You know, I guess he had heard that I was selling a lot of weight in Santa Barbara at that time. He wanted to set up a meeting with me, and he had me come over to his pizza shop. Now, it's the same guy that later put a gun underneath the table and accused me of being a rat because one of my runners was dating one of my therapists at the methadone clinic. But that's down the line. First time I met him was at this pizza shop. He owned it. I forget what this pizza place was called, but it was right next door to this medical marijuana place. And they ended up getting busted for money laundering because this pizza place was, I don't know, essentially an they weren't doing things on the books. Everything was kind of like sketchy there. And eventually they got this guy for money laundering. And I don't think they ever busted him for having the underage sex slave on PCP. That'd be quite the charge, though. What are you in here for? Possession of an underage sex slave with intent to give her PCP for sexual enslavement. Oh, that sucks, man. I have one of those, too. I don't know. It's not a charge, but when I ended up meeting him, we met at this pizza place that he owned, and I went there. I forget who, somebody, I don't know, we had a mutual friend. I mean, I was a heroin dealer at the time, he was a heroin dealer at the time, and he just, I guess, wanted to meet me because I was considered his competition or whatever. When I end up getting to this pizza place, I knew right away that he was a crackhead, just the way that he was acting. He was like, hey man, I'm Steve. But like, he had his hair gelled, so it was like, at least you're making an effort not to look like you're on crack. Because most crackheads don't even fuck with hair gel. This guy was like, it was like the Ace Ventura. He was like, hey man, do you smoke rocks? I was like, nah, not anymore. So he introduces himself to me, and he basically tells me that the reason that he wanted to meet me was because he had just gotten arrested, I don't know, a couple weeks before this, and he had gone to Santa Barbara County Jail, and he said there was a guy in there named Scott, same guy that I pulled the fake gun out at Happy's party when Amanda had like jumped on the grenade for me. Same guy that pulled the gun out on me, and that he had met him in jail, and then he was in there running his mouth about me, and basically, like, yeah. He was at this pool party that I was at. I was fucked him up. Tied him up like a hog, homeboy. Like talking shit like that. And he was telling, I guess, a bunch of people in there that I was a big time dealer and that he wanted to rob me. And he was like he's just like, back then at Santa Barbara County Jail, they had what's called an honor farm. And, I guess it was like for the better behaved inmates. And you could actually smoke cigarettes on the honor farm. So they were all sitting out on this wooden table. God knows how many people he was saying this shit to. But he was basically explaining that I have this house. Now, I'd already moved at this point. I'd moved to this new house that I was just telling you about. But he knew where my old address was. And he was asking anybody if they wanted to help rob me with him. And I guess this guy, Steve, who was the other heroin dealer, said that he was interested. And so they would like walk laps around the jail with these other two guys, these fucking idiots. And they had guns, supposedly, and they were going to come rob my house. And Steve said that he respected me, he'd heard good things about me, whatever, I don't know, just some bullshit, some crackhead with hair gels telling me. And that he kind of played along with them, saying that, he wanted to rob me, or he wanted to participate in the robbing, just so that he could get the intel and then he could present it to me and we could kind of like make some sort of pact. And he said that he would take care of the situation. I didn't know what that entailed, if I would let him in on the connection that I had down in LA, because I was getting the multicolored balloons from the cartel down there. And what he was doing is he was buying black tar heroin, and this is how much he copied me. He put them in little aluminum, like, little like ball, like they weren't balloons, but he made them look like aluminum balloons. They're like the Terminator, they're like the RoboCop of fucking heroin balloons. And then he would sell them for the same price. Like he stole my business model. But of course I was making more money than him because I was fucking directly with the cartel, so I was getting way cheaper prices than he could possibly get. So that was his offer. He said he basically had infiltrated this like group of these loser guys that were planning on robbing me, and that if I could cut him in, that he would take care of it. And I told him that I'd have to discuss it with Jenny because she was my business partner, and then I'd get back to him. This led to a whole bunch of crazy shit, and we will get into all that because there was another part of it that I didn't know that I'm about to find out that was attractive and taking care of the SAS situation. We'll get into all that in the next video. I have to take a shit. Palabra.
Shocking new government report about the border crisis that Sherrod Brown created. Almost 500,000 convicted criminals just walked in, including murderers and rapists. Sherrod Brown's policies released them all over America. And here's what Sherrod Brown says.
I don't hear a lot about immigration from voters.
That's because Sherrod Brown doesn't listen to voters anymore. He's way too liberal for Ohio. American Crossroads is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Get real. Your butt's not perfect, but at Orgain, we support them all. Whether you're toning up a bubble butt or powering through with that peach, Orgain is the protein-packed nutrition you need to achieve your goals. Orgain, it's real nutrition for real life.
New Aveeno Daily Moisturizing Cream instantly strengthens skin's moisture barrier.
Child of my child, I will give you the violence you
I had a bubble with that, so no, that's what I probably the guy right now.
And then definitely this series will start talking about like all the crazy, weird, like orgy, weird shit. Like he took me to my first sex party and just way out stuff, right? So Damien, god damn, like his fucking name was Damon. Okay, Damon owed him this money, and the reason that he owed him money was because somebody owed Damon the money. And it was a big deal because Damon kept like kind of giving the runaround. Now this guy Matt, he was no punk. He wasn't from Santa Barbara, you know. He was from Sacramento. He was like a real gangster kind of guy, you know. He was nice, but he drove around an Escalade and he was packing gas all the time, you know. And he was shooting shit. He'd get all wasted, and like I said, he'd blow holes and be at like a nice hotel, and he'd be like, "What? You think I'm a bitch?" And just start blasting on the wall. Like, oh, that's smart. We have a goddamn quarter-pound of coke in this motel room. He said, I don't care. We'll blame it on those bitches right there. See, and that's how he was, you know. He's just kind of like out of his mind. And so I'm over at the couple's house, and him and I had already kind of struck up like this, like, you know, alliance. Like, we were like, there was solidarity between the two of us. And he's telling me that about the Damon situation, that he owes him like 15 or 20K. And he tells me that it gets worse because the reason that Damon owes him that money is because Damon had been fronting it to another person. So it was like a front on top of a front on top of a front. And you can't really do drug dealing like that. I mean, at a certain point, it becomes a Ponzi scheme. You know, you can extend credit. Like if you look at selling drugs as if it's like a chain, right? You can sell drugs, and then that person can extend credit. But you can't give credit to this person, that person gives somebody credit, and then that person gives somebody credit, because it becomes the robbing Peter to pay Paul Ponzi scheme aspect of drug dealing, and you can't do that because pyramid schemes inevitably fail, right? So I guess Matt, he had all these guns, he had all these like really gangster friends that he'd hang out with, you know. I think he like recruited crackheads from like Oakland and like the Bay Area, people from Northern California, all black guys. They all wear Raiders gear and shit, and they would come down with him and kind of like be his muscle. And he had hurt quite a few people. I know there was a situation where somebody had stolen from him, not a lot, like an ounce or two of coke. This person was a college-age drug dealer, and Matt had paid somebody, some crazy black guy, to go into this kid that had stolen from him was like a college kid in Santa Barbara. This black dude goes in the middle of the night into this house. It was like a duplex. He goes into the kid's room, holds him down, like puts so his stomach is flat, puts his arm behind his back, and he's telling him, he's like, hey man, And you know, the white kid from Santa Barbara's thrashed at her, like, please help me. And he's telling us, hey, the reason that I'm breaking your arm is because you stole drugs from my homie Matt. So just so you know, the guy's like, no, and he just fucking breaks the dude's arm. Like, this guy was like some massive guy, snapped the dude's arm back, broke it. Like, that was like folklore that we had heard in Santa Barbara about Matt, because you know, it wasn't from there. And again, the whole reoccurring theme of this story and this whole series, for that matter, is that when you're in prison, when you're a drug dealer, you start playing the part. So like, you think, oh, someone owes me money, I'm gonna pay a minority to go break his arm. You know, he'll be my juice, and that's like how people think and stuff. When you get to this like weird like wannabe level of drug dealer. So with that being said, we're at this house. I'm out on the porch. I'm smoking cigarettes. I'm talking to Matt about the situation. And he says that he was putting pressure on Damon. Damon's cool, smart guy, burnout, a big old bulge in a Speedo. But the thing with Damon is he panics. You know, he's like one of those guys, if you put too much pressure on him, he cracks. Now, when you sell drugs and you're in the drug world, there's large amounts of money being exchanged, especially when it got bigger. When I started selling things and I, you know, yield $50,000 on one fucking transaction. It's crazy, you know. Most people have never made $50,000 cash in their entire life. I was 23 years old. That was happening to me regularly, sometimes a few times in a month, shit like that. When you start making that kind of money, bad things can happen, A, and B, a lot of people like crack under pressure and panic. And Damon was one of those people. Matt had showed up to his house with a gun already on a couple occasions. And what he would do is he'd go in there just like in a movie, talk to him. The whole time they're having the conversation, he'd put like the 45 down on the table. And he'd just sit there with his legs crossed, you know? And he'd be like, look, man, like, I don't want to have to do anything that I'll regret or that you'll regret, but, you know, it's going to happen if you don't pay me. So the kind of pressure that he was applying on Damon was very effective. And all this money that was owed to him, Damon started freaking out. I'd never even heard of this situation.
Yes.
You know, Matt was telling me about it. It was the first time I'd ever heard about it. But what he told me